Lena needed the money to save her family's small bakery. Elias needed a temporary wife to secure a massive merger. They signed the contract, never imagining the temporary deal would become permanent due to a shocking, unexpected addition. Lena sat across the mahogany table from Elias Vance, the most powerful and cold CEO in the city. Her life was defined by the scent of flour and despair, his by global finance and absolute control. The terms of the contract were ruthless. 6 months as his wife to satisfy a rigid clause in a merger agreement, and in return, Lena received a sum large enough to clear her family's debt and secure the bakery's future forever. Elias, devastatingly handsome and utterly devoid of warmth, viewed her as a necessary business transaction. "You will be seen, but not heard," he instructed, his eyes sweeping over her with detached assessment. "You will not ask questions about my business or my past. Our interaction is purely contractual." Lena, desperate and pragmatic, agreed. She hated his arrogance, but she needed his money. As she signed the document, Elias's hand covered hers briefly, a powerful electric shock that instantly made her question the no-intimacy clause she'd insisted upon. She looked at him, and he simply gave her a cold, practiced smile. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Vance. Try not to cause any unnecessary complications." The contract was signed in blood and ink, but Lena felt a terrifying premonition. The complication was already standing in the room, watching her with dark, possessive eyes. This deal was meant to save her family, but she feared it would cost her heart. The honeymoon was a magnificent farce. They flew to a secluded villa in Santorini, but shared separate wings of the house. Elias was meticulous in his formality, adhering strictly to the contract's no-intimacy clause. They were two elegant strangers sharing a breathtaking view and an immense secret. Yet, the pretense began to crack during their public appearances. Elias needed to look devoted, and Lena needed to look adored. Under the intense glare of the cameras, Elias's hand would rest on the small of her back, a touch that was meant to be performative, but felt deeply possessive and warm. One evening, after a particularly exhausting dinner with business partners, Lena collapsed onto the sofa. Elias walked in, saw her slumped in exhaustion, and, against the rules, gently covered her with a cashmere throw. "You look tired," he murmured, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "The deception is draining." Lena looked up, seeing the genuine fatigue and stress in his eyes. She realized the mask he wore was heavy for him, too. "You're tired because you're fighting your own nature," she observed. "You're not truly this cold." He tensed, the mask instantly snapping back into place. "You misunderstand me, Lena. I am exactly who I appear to be. Don't confuse decency with desire." But the brief, vulnerable look in his eyes, a flicker of shared weariness, was the first evidence that the cold CEO was fighting a secret, human battle against the need for connection. The accident was inevitable. One night, back in their penthouse, Lena suffered a terrible nightmare. A terrifying flashback to the fire that almost destroyed her bakery years ago, the memory of her fear causing her to wake up screaming, thrashing in the sterile guest suite. Elias, hearing the distress through the soundproof walls, burst into her room. He found her trembling, tears streaming down her face. His usual cold control dissolved immediately, replaced by raw human instinct. He sat on the bed, pulling her into his arms, the action entirely spontaneous and non-contractual. "It's all right, Lena. You're safe," he murmured, his voice deep and soothing. The contact was electric, merging their separate worlds into one intimate space. The comfort quickly morphed into a fierce, blinding passion. The years of suppressed loneliness, the tension of the fake marriage, and the raw vulnerability of the nightmare stripped away every professional barrier. The kiss was desperate and consuming, a physical confession of the intense attraction they had both desperately denied. They shed their roles, the CEO and the contract wife, in a frantic rush. Elias was dominant yet tender, whispering her name like a plea. The contract, with its strict no-intimacy clause, was completely forgotten in the heat of their desperate, undeniable connection. This single, shared night was reckless, unplanned, and utterly irreversible, securing a passionate bond that would soon redefine their entire arrangement. The morning after their reckless night was defined by silence and deep, painful shame. Lena woke alone, the memory of Elias's fierce tenderness a brand on her skin. She found Elias in his study, impeccably dressed, the CEO mask firmly back in place, looking more controlled and colder than ever. He treated the previous night as a massive, regrettable error, a breakdown of the contract, not a breakthrough of passion. "That will not happen again, Lena," he stated, his voice flat. "It compromised the agreement. It was unprofessional." Lena, deeply hurt by his immediate rejection of their intense connection, confronted him. "Unprofessional? It was real. You didn't feel anything?" Elias merely stared at her, his eyes cold and unyielding. "I felt passion, yes, but I also felt profound regret. My focus is the merger. I don't mix business with sentiment." His coldness was a painful lie, yet she saw the deep, raw struggle in his eyes. He was terrified of what had happened, terrified of losing control to her. The ensuing weeks were agonizing. Elias became more distant, working late, avoiding any chance of proximity. Lena, meanwhile, felt a growing, unsettling fatigue, dizziness, and a strange aversion to the strong scent of Elias's expensive cologne. The physical reality of the complication was beginning to manifest, subtly undermining the very contract that defined their temporary life. Lena's persistent nausea and consuming exhaustion finally forced her to visit a doctor under the strictest secrecy. She needed to know what was wrong, terrified the stress of the fake marriage was breaking her health. The doctor's words hit her with the force of a physical blow. She wasn't sick. She was pregnant. Her heart stopped. His heir, the child of their single, reckless night, now threatening to shatter Elias's entire meticulously planned world. The contract, which dictated a clean, non-emotional end, was now permanently void. Back at the penthouse, Lena attempted to hide the news, but the exhaustion was consuming. Elias noticed immediately. He saw her nausea during a formal dinner and the sudden, protective way she placed her hand on her abdomen. He pulled her aside later, his voice low and dangerous. "You're hiding something. What is wrong?" Lena tried to deny it, but her terror made her voice shake. "It's nothing, just stress." Elias stepped closer, his intense gaze pinning her to the wall. "Don't lie to me, Lena. I'm your husband, and your health is part of the contract's liability." He was angry, but beneath the anger, there was a frightening, watchful intelligence. Lena knew she couldn't keep the secret much longer. The innocent life growing inside her was no longer just her secret. It was Elias's future, Elias's vulnerability, and Elias's ultimate complication. The secret became too heavy to carry. Lena was preparing to confess when the truth was ripped from her control. One morning, Elias was searching for a document in her suite and found a subtle, undeniable clue. A prescription bottle for prenatal vitamins hidden in her bathroom drawer. The world stopped. He stood there, holding the small bottle, the cold truth radiating from him like ice. He didn't shout, he didn't accuse. He walked into the living room where Lena stood, his face a mask of terrifying, controlled fury. "Tell me this is a joke," he demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. "Tell me this is stress medication." Lena couldn't speak, the shame and fear choking her. She simply nodded once, tears streaming down her face. The truth was out. Elias dropped the bottle onto the table. The small sound echoed through the vast penthouse. He didn't touch her or yell. Instead, he started pacing, running his hand through his perfectly styled hair, his mind clearly racing through the corporate ramifications. "A child," he muttered, his voice thick with disbelief. "A consequence I never accounted for. The contract is worthless. Everything is ruined." His first reaction was purely focused on the business failure, shattering Lena's fragile hope for a loving response. He looked at her then, and his eyes were cold. "You should have told me. Now we proceed on my terms." His emotional distance was a defense mechanism against a consequence that represented everything he couldn't control. The fake marriage was officially over, replaced by a terrifying, unplanned reality. Elias immediately implemented a new, unwritten contract centered solely on the baby. The emotional distance remained, but the physical control became absolute. He hired a team of doctors, mandated daily checkups, and monitored her diet and schedule with military precision. "You will be kept safe," he declared, his voice firm, "for the sake of the heir." Lena found herself trapped in a gilded cage of medical surveillance. She was grateful for the protection but deeply hurt by his emotional detachment. He was obsessed with the pregnancy's safety, yet completely ignored her feelings. One afternoon, frustrated by his clinical approach, Lena snapped, "I am not an incubator, Elias. I am the mother of your child." Elias stopped, his face softening only slightly, the coldness wavering. "And I am the father," he said, his voice quiet. He confessed that his rigidity was a deeply rooted fear response. He was terrified of loss, having lost his own parents tragically young. "I need control, Lena. I need to know you are both safe. I don't know how to do this except through precision." His confession was a crack of humanity, showing the deep, vulnerable fear behind the CEO mask. Lena realized he wasn't rejecting her. He was simply terrified of loving a child he couldn't control or protect from fate. The shared fear of loss became the first, tentative bridge between them. The situation escalated dangerously when Elias's powerful corporate rival, Marcus Sterling, the man behind the merger clause, discovered the pregnancy. Marcus had only agreed to the merger believing Elias would remain a cold, unattached business machine, incapable of family. The heir was a weakness Marcus intended to exploit. Elias received a chilling threat: compromise the merger, or Marcus would publicize the baby's existence, painting Elias as a reckless liar who violated the terms of the original contract. Elias, driven by a fierce, raw protective instinct, fought back, working late into the night. Lena, watching him, felt her love and commitment grow. One night, she crept into his study, offering him coffee and sitting beside him. "Tell me about your parents," she whispered. Elias finally opened up, sharing the painful story of their sudden, tragic deaths and the crushing loneliness he faced growing up, leading to his reliance on rigid control. "My life is about minimizing risk, Lena," he admitted, his eyes filled with sorrow. "And now you and our child are the biggest, most beautiful risk I've ever taken." Lena reached out and touched his hand, realizing the truth. Their marriage started as a transaction, but the baby and the shared danger had forged it into a real, unbreakable partnership built on mutual vulnerability and deep, protective love. The shared danger of Marcus's threats pushed Lena and Elias together with devastating finality. They worked side by side, Lena using her innate common sense to help Elias anticipate Marcus's next move. One evening, after successfully neutralizing a legal attack, the relief was overwhelming. The air between them was thick with admiration, love, and exhaustion. The need to connect was absolute, overriding the strict formality of the contract. Elias pulled Lena into his arms, the action no longer restrained by business rules, but fueled by the desperate, protective love he could no longer hide. They retreated to the master suite, shedding the layers of the CEO and the contract wife. The intimacy that followed was fierce, tender, and intensely committed, a physical covenant sealing their future against the world's threats. It was a release of all the tension, fear, and years of denial. Elias claimed her with the devotion of a man who realized he had loved her since the first electric touch. Lena surrendered entirely, realizing this was the moment their fake marriage ended and their real family began. In the quiet aftermath, wrapped in his arms, Elias whispered, "You and our child are my world. I will never let anything touch you." The merger closed successfully, with Elias neutralizing Marcus's threats using a brilliant countermove that exposed Marcus's own unethical dealings. The scandal died, and Elias was hailed as a genius. He immediately tore up the original contract. "It's null and void," he told Lena, his eyes filled with tenderness. "Our life is based on a new, permanent agreement." A few months later, Lena gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Elias, the cold CEO, was utterly transformed. He was a loving, gentle father, his old fear replaced by profound joy. He dedicated his fortune to protecting their family and founded a charitable wing of Blackwood Industries dedicated to supporting small family businesses, ensuring Lena's bakery legacy was safe forever. A year later, they stood together in the fully restored bakery, now a bustling success. Elias, holding their daughter, looked at Lena, his gaze full of the protective love she had earned. "I didn't know how to love you, Lena," he confessed softly. "I only knew how to own. But you taught me that the best things in life aren't purchased. They are built." He placed a genuine wedding band on her finger. "Will you marry me again, for real this time? For a lifetime, no contracts required." Lena, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and the sound of her daughter's laughter, said yes. They had built a love forged in deception and secured by an unexpected heir, proving that sometimes the greatest treasures are the complications you never accounted for. Which part of Elias's secret, his profound fear of loss, or the true threat from Marcus, gave you the most suspense? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you want more dramatic twists, powerful protective heroes, and unexpected pregnancies, please like this video and subscribe for more videos like this.